uh, almost winterish November day, just before Chem AI bursts loose in Amsterdam. Welcome to Trends in AI. My name is Jakub Zavral, the founder of Zeta Alpha, and with me, my co-presenter.
Hi everyone, I'm Dinos, AI research engineer at Z Alpha and the co-host of the Trends in AI webinar. We're having a very special episode today because of all the events going around this time of the year.
It's a very busy time.
It is. And the topic is scientific discovery and appliances of AI in chemistry, pharma, all these domains where science and
real science
and hard science takes place.
Exactly. But before we launch into that, what did you think of the NVIDIA earnings yesterday?
Well, I'm kind of thankful that the bubble didn't pop, but maybe we're on at least time.
Are you long NVIDIA?
I am, yes.
Well, it might pop eventually, but probably not in science. There is a very hot area and it's only building up. So we have our regular mix of news and research papers, gossip, and a lot on scientific discovery this edition. But before we go there, let's start with some breaking news. Pretty interesting development in European regulatory scene. Yesterday it was confirmed, there were already rumors that the European AI Act will be put in the fridge.
And not only that, right? So not just the AI Act, but a lot of other European...
there's the so-called Omnibus Act, which is supposed to simplify and rewrite some of the complexity in these laws. But actually, rumor has it that there was quite a lot of pushback from the US and American big tech companies that they were not able to get ready for the August 26 deadline on high-risk applications. What I think is good is that the regulation has not really been changed. It's mainly a delay of the period that people have to get ready. So, I think somewhat of a compromise, which is good. In other European news, there was quite a lot of fuss about gigafactories, etc., but nothing was really getting done. Now, these gentlemen here, they look like they're really building a gigafactory. So this is in Germany, the largest European AI compute data center so far, 100,000 GPUs in Brandenburg under Berlin. Initiated by Schwarzgruppe, the parent company of Lidl, which is 10 times bigger than the previous announcement that was from Deutsche Telekom and NVIDIA, which was only 10,000 GPUs. More European action, a little bit more in line with our topic of today, AI for science and scientific discovery. What's going on there?
Yeah, so the European Commission kind of has this grand plan of bringing more of talent in AI in Europe and maintaining it across all terms. So it's this RAISE program, which is a kind of online and virtual institute that will allocate GPU to research programs and researchers in Europe who want to carry out experiments. And it also has a lot of other kind of nice benefits, like they will have a team that will be actively collecting data that's needed to train all kinds of AI systems, and kind of budget, the funding for research, and as well as the GPU itself, which is coming out of the Euro HPC project.
So there might be a lot of GPU, but maybe better to go to your local Lidl. You might get more GPU there. The actual number for research funding is not in this snippet here. I think it was about 107 million euro. When you divide it by all the European countries, it's like one postdoc per country. So I was not too impressed. Another European development, I think last time we reported that SAP was getting very close with OpenAI and calling it sovereign European AI. I think they've kind of been receiving some phone calls to course correct a little bit from maybe the French and
So I think
their own government.
they have this ongoing partnership with Mistral, and their latest push is basically a collaboration where they'll be promoting and integrating Mistral models in their enterprise stack.
Yeah, and this was announced at a French-German summit on digital sovereignty 2 days ago. So let's switch to big tech.
Yeah, I mean, the fuzz of the week, at least everyone is talking about Gemini 3, and I think for very good reason. So Google took its time. They have been pretty quiet with the releases in the past few weeks to months. And so they dropped Gemini 3 after some teasing from Sundar and others. And I think this snippet from benchmarks that they posted in the release blog talks for itself. It's basically state of the art in virtually almost every category. So we see a lot of multimodal understanding, we see document parsing, coding, parametric knowledge, all kinds of things. So maybe it's the easiest way to describe it is the only benchmark where it's not topping the herd is software engineering benchmark where Claude Sonnet is still the king,
close.
but it's pretty close.
It's pretty close. Yeah. So I think this is the number one frontier model right now. Mm-hmm. Obviously not a very scientific benchmark, but on the LLMs arena, it's broken the 1500 ELO point barrier, which is the first time a model does that, and with a pretty good distance from I think Grok and GPT 5.1 is our kind of behind it. So Google's back on top.
Yeah, I think a topic that we'll see a lot today is this deep thinking and its kind of rollout mode. Where I would say the most impressive one here is the ArcAGI2 score.
Which is really like...
Yeah, it's blowing everything out of the water compared to the previous generation or even current generation of models. And it's just showing that this inference time scaling and this reasoning paradigm is here to stay and also delivering pretty good results in complex tasks.
Do you remember January this year when humanity's last exam was at 0%?
Yeah. Times change, and maybe we need a new final last exam.
The last exam. So 41. That's a pretty solid score. Though we will see some actually open source models getting pretty close on that one as well later in the show. And kind of parallel with Gemini 3, they announced finally a big unveil of what they did with the acquisition, right?
Windsurf.
Of Windsurf.
Yeah, so it's not an acquisition of Windsurf. They just poached some very important people in Windsurf.
And those didn't mess around.
Yeah, so they've probably been working on this, and it's their agentic first IDE, which is a wrap of VS Code or even wrap of Windsurf. In some cases, people found references to Windsurf terminology in it. Yeah. And I think the kind of nice and main differentiator is that they kind of redesigned the interaction with the language model to be more like a canvas or kind of an experience that shifts further away from an IDE towards this collaboration space with an agent. And Gemini 3 is the...
And they run it on the Gemini 3 as a inference engine.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then one final snippet, which I found yesterday from the VP of Research and lead of Gemini.
Oriol Vinyals would know something about what they did.
Yeah, and I think it's just refreshing to hear that there's no wall from their perspective in both pre-training and post-training. They're saying that the jump from 2.5 to 3 in pre-training is massive. And in post-training, they're claiming that they haven't even started scratching the surface on things that they can do to improve.
Yeah.
So pretty optimistic, at least from their side. And I think the results also kind of confirm that they sure have ideas on how to improve further.
And scale on a lot of compute, right? And that brings us to our next topic. Certainly, Google is not short on compute. Actually, they brought out a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, their new generation of TPUs called Ironwood, which they can stack up to supercomputers of 9,000 units, where NVIDIA goes to something like 72 or 100 something in one unit. And TPUs have always been a little bit weaker than NVIDIA's top-of-the-line GPUs.
Per unit.
Per unit. They were strong because they can be assembled into such huge beasts. But now this 7th generation TPU, Ironwood, actually matches NVIDIA's B200 compute pretty closely with 4.6 against 4.5 petaflops at the same inference, and it has the same memory capacity as well, although at a slightly lower. So I think if anyone can continue to play the scale game, it will be Google. Certainly a compute advantage. They have still the distribution advantage, no matter what Perplexity says. They have all the data, and they still have quite a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. So my bets, you're betting on NVIDIA, I'm betting on Google. OpenAI, not that hot in the front pages, apart from its financial engineering wizardry. But there was a release.
Yeah, and I think
5.1 kind of iterative point release.
Really, yeah, so right? It's similar to the 4.0 to 4.1. This 0.1 iteration is a bit more of a product of love. They just want to have a better model based on what they already have easy access to. So better data probably, and some feedback on where the previous generation was going a bit off the rails. And yeah, this model, the main advertising here is that it thinks longer for difficult tasks and spends fewer tokens for easy ones, which we can see on the figure on the right. So for easy answers, it thinks even it uses half of the tokens, but for difficult ones, it almost doubles the output.
For safety reasons, OpenAI has removed the number on the y-axis because they had previously some issues with that.
Interesting accidents. Yeah, and in this artificial analysis intelligence index, they actually were topping the chart, and that is, of course, until Gemini 3 came out. So the next slide, we also show that it gets beaten, but not by much. So we're still seeing the close competition there.
Yeah, and I think sort of from the buzz on social media, what I've seen a lot is that GPT-5 is a little bit more steerable, mm-hmm. More like able to follow instructions more closely, and also to maintain this kind of attention to a plan over a longer period of time. I think we'll be seeing a lot of that, and actually it's also one of the advantages that the Gemini press release mm-hmm. mentions of Gemini 3.
Yeah, and exactly this. So in this next figure, we show this research by Matter. We only see the OpenAI models here, but their newest release, which is getting pretty complicated to spell out, GPT 5.1 Codex Max, basically just advances these long time coherence and the time that it can successfully carry out tasks. So it reaches a 50% time horizon of almost 3 hours, where at least 50% of the tasks succeed of this length, which is pretty interesting. So they kind of benchmark this to be a the model is able to train an adversarially robust image model by itself. So I guess this just continues this trend, and we see agents being
like
able
coding tasks, mm-hmm. basically like long agentic coding mm-hmm. tasks that succeed. Mm-hmm. That line is going up pretty steeply. All right. On the open source, we've seen some bangers as well. MiniMax.
Yeah, so this caused quite a stir, and I think the main reason is the efficiency part. So MiniMax M2, they had M1 as a first release, and now this one is a 230 billion total parameter model with just 10 billion active parameters. And if you read the blog post, all of their marketing efforts are in the price and the speed front. So they have this nice quadrant showing that also the x-axis is flipped. The rightmost models are the cheapest to run, and the y-axis is just intelligence, again on this artificial analysis benchmark. And they show that they're pretty close to other open source models, but most importantly is the Pareto optimal in terms of cost and intelligence.
Right.
And in the next figure, we also show a lot of their effort is benchmarking it against other proprietary or open models. And it seems to be pretty on par, or at least not significantly behind with Sonnet 4.5. And yeah, they're banging on this cost efficiency. So you should see here clearly on the right, is the cheapest model to run except for DeepSeek, which is a bit smaller.
Yeah. Is DeepSeek on the previous one?
It's somewhere there, yes.
All right. It's pretty close. It's in the same region. Yeah. All right. And the other one.
Also, a fun fact here is they didn't even plan to release this model. They just happened to be so good, and they said, "Okay, let's release it then."
Did it release itself? And the other one was Kimi, which is a very big model, right?
Yeah, so this one is actually just going for the frontier.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a 1 trillion total parameter model with 32 billion parameters active. So it's not that many.
So you could run it with some optimization.
In terms of inference speed, it's still pretty fast because it's quite sparse, but still you need to fit 1 trillion parameters. So NVIDIA will love that. And the main selling point here is obviously the performance. So we see it head-to-head with all of the big releases. I think it's missing Gemini 3 because this figure came out last few weeks before. But the main selling point here is, again, long rollouts, up to 200, 300 steps, and this interleaved planning of execution, reflection, code execution, verification, and so on.
But I think we can truly say that open source is still narrowing the gap, right? The frontier labs that are releasing proprietary models are just being chased right on their tail by the Chinese open source labs.
Yeah, on the previous figures with the artificial intelligence index, we saw Kimi being third or fourth.
I saw quite a lot of discussion on the web that the US is kind of getting worried that they don't really have a credible open source alternative at the moment, and that sort of in the hearts and minds of developers, that's a big problem.
Yeah, and I mean, pretty interesting timing because just 2 hours ago, Olmo released their new generation of models.
Olmo to the rescue.
Yeah, so this is from Allen Institute of AI, and they actually took a bit different approach. They care also a lot for researchers and people who can run these models. So they only released pretty small models by today's standards. It's 2 dense models of 7 and 32 billion parameters. And obviously, it's not the best model out there, but it's definitely the best fully open source model. So training codes, data, weights, checkpoints, everything in between. And you actually can see what the model has been trained on, which is pretty significant for some people who care about their models, knowing what they can say and cannot say. And yeah, in their kind of advertising pitch, they claim it's the best open and punches pretty close to Qwen and other truly frontier open models.
Yeah, so it kind of matches Qwen 3 in performance.
While being super.
Qwen 3 is not known what data it was trained on, right?
Yeah.
No. Might have been trained to insert some backdoors here and there. Who knows?
I mean, for the nerds and the researchers, it's a 100 report. So I think this will become a staple in terms of data and ablation studies.
Yeah,
it's out there.
The recipes are out there, and this is how you do it. All right, time for a little commercial break. So for those of you who haven't heard yet, we are Zeta Alpha, and we are the AI foundation layer for knowledge-intensive enterprises, AI agents and tools to help you discover and organize knowledge, proprietary knowledge inside your organization, but also public knowledge. It's also how we make this webinar for R&D and beyond. And so check out our platform, go to our website, zetaalpha.com, and try it out. So it helps you discover and chat with your own content, share with people, organize your projects using collections that we call tags, read and chat with documents, get recommendations, and do all this in a team effort. And I'm happy that today I can show you a little sneak preview. You have to try to experience the real magic of it. But basically, we now allow you not only to use the agents that are already pre-configured in the platform, but we allow you to create your own and schedule them so that they can do work on your behalf while you're busy doing other stuff. and share them within your team. So create your own agents, schedule them, and share them. So basically, when you're chatting in Zeta Alpha, you can select one of the pre-existing agents from a library that either your teammates have made or that are pre-packaged in your account for your own data. You can create your own by simply clicking which data sources and what instructions you can use. This is really cool because you can actually tie an agent to a tag, so a collection of documents to do some work on your behalf on that collection or give the instructions in a specific document. And then you can also do like very sophisticated agents, of course, using the agents SDK and MCP tools and all of that. And then once you've created the agent, you can schedule it to run for you monthly, daily, weekly, at particular times to do work. So for example, and you can share it with your team. So you can not all reinvent the wheel. So for example, just very quickly, we released this today. I've kind of set up an agent to do this show for us. Let's go. Next month is going to be out of it. All right. So that ends the commercial break. This was one of the big sort of big dramas in the recent months, right? It's kind of been brewing.
Yeah, I would think all this contention and who is leading Facebook AI research, Meta Superintelligence Lab. It's all of who is the big boss there.
Yeah. And
we know the answer. It's not Jan.
Well, it's not Jan. Jan LeCun has left, and I think there was no other way in all of that drama. And of course, there were already rumors, and now it's been confirmed by him yesterday, I think. And he is leaving to build his own startup. And because we know that he's not so much in love with the scaling laws of Meta Superintelligence Lab or just using LLMs. He believes really in world models, right? So I think that's what his startup will be. And if you want to get kind of a glimpse of what he's working on, there's actually a paper is it last week? This week. Sorry, that's Friday last week. Called Le Jepa, which is kind of another indication that his new company might actually be based in France. He might move back to Paris, who knows? But anyway, it's a nice paper kind of highlighting this JEPA framework, which is about kind of maintaining a world model in the latent space and doing prediction and kind of verification of your prediction at the same time in an unsupervised way. And this is a kind of a new mathematical framework for that. Check it out. Le Chat and Le Jepa. Another very interesting startup that's just been launched. Well, it's been under the radar for a bit, but there was an article this week in the New York Times. It's called Project Prometheus, and apparently is the startup where Jeff Bezos is going all in, actually working there full time, and creating an AI for the physical world, for industry, as he says, and throwing a small 6.2 billion seed investment at it. So I think
spare change.
Some people said he is kind of jealous of Elon getting all the attention, so hitting back here. But if you look at this list of people, he's already recruited actually quite a solid list of top researchers. Nel Kalkbrenner was here at Google in Amsterdam. It's being his co-CEO is Vic Bajaj, who was the head of the Moonshot Factory at Google. So yeah, some very serious talent here. Interestingly, some of these people are working out of Zurich. So it will have a European branch right from the start. And in the New York Times article, it's actually been compared to periodic labs. So we don't really know what Project Prometheus is going to do, but if it's somewhat similar to periodic labs, it's also somewhat similar to our Amsterdam darlings of CUSP AI and Radical AI. It's kind of in the material space. So a lot of these people have background in computational chemistry and these more like scientific discovery models for materials. And apparently the goal is to build cool, real physical stuff.
I'm curious because the name is intriguing. I wonder what connection it has to Prometheus.
So I looked up Project Prometheus on Wikipedia, and it was a 1950s program for nuclear propulsion in space. But I don't know if that's more the Greek mythology. That's
Well, maybe it's an analogy to something. Maybe it is an analogy to some, not nuclear, but fundamental or groundbreaking.
Yeah, well, to bring the fire from the gods to the people, I guess. We'll see. Not every billionaire who throws a lot of money succeeds. But CUSP AI certainly is doing well. Last month, the Sifted AI 100. So Sifted is a European publication watching the AI startup space in Europe. And CUSP AI actually came out on top. Congratulations to our neighbors here in Lab 42. CUSP AI is the most promising AI startup in Europe. Interesting when you look at this list, there's quite a lot of these actually kind of more industry and chemistry and life science oriented. So I think all the productivity apps are kind of pulling back a little bit, and there's a lot of the Cradle and physics is both kind of really inventing new stuff. So that's very much in line with our topic of today, which is AI for scientific discovery.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty, I wouldn't say it's a novel topic, but definitely it's been gaining traction. And if you just track the number of publications on this topic, it's growing like
I have
crazy.
that graph from our own data, Zeta Alpha AI papers index. You see that actually was a very relatively niche topic until kind of 23. It started rising, and now it's really booming. So it kind of started, well, it got a lot of attention with these two papers here. The AI scientist from Sakana, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but that's almost more than a year ago, September 24. And then earlier this year, we saw the AI co-scientist from Google. And of course, we with Zeta Alpha have been digging into this treasure trove as well with our deep research agent, which we brought out actually
November.
Just about exactly 1 year ago. Of course, the difference with our deep research engine that it's primarily oriented towards private enterprise data, whereas a lot of these things are more kind of working in the academic research domain. So just a little overview of the semantic map. I don't know if you can read all of that, but there's a lot of activity kind of in the life sciences, chemistry, drug discovery space, physical material stuff, benchmarking. We'll talk about all of that. So going back a little bit, so what's the idea with this sort of using AI to be a co-scientist or AI scientist? So I think in this workflow, which is from the Sakana paper, you kind of see the idea. So there's still a human in the loop, but very much at the beginning. So a human researcher gets an idea or a plan for a certain type of innovation, and the rest just kind of flows down the chart with separate AI agents doing all the different tasks. So You come up with an idea, you want to do a literature search to check what's already out there, um, and collect different ideas from the literature, score them, and then kind of work them out. And I think these kind of early models, they have kind of two tools. They have the ability to write and read, search the web. So that's kind of one set of tools, and then create code and models. So if you have data, you can give it the data, and it will, be able to do statistical analyses, create charts and plots, and compare hypotheses.
And here we also see a very rigid sequence of kind of modes of operation, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of instructed to just finish this, find the best in this task, and then continue with the next one.
It's agentic, but it's really just like a recipe. And in the end, you end up with a paper that is then maybe ready for submission, maybe not quite. I think they did submit one of these papers to a workshop. The other paper, which kind of caught a lot of attention, has a slightly different design. It's a little bit more kind of bubbly, self-organizing type of agentic, in the sense that in this paper, AI co-scientists from Google, it's really kind of a competition. So different hypotheses get evaluated by all these different agents, and then they play games against each other, and they have discussions on what is a better approach. And then they also have search and other tools. And then eventually they bubble back to the research scientist, not with a paper, but actually with like a more crystallized research idea.
Yeah, also we see a lot of reflection and back and forth. So this is a bit less rigid and a bit more, majority vote and kind of a brute force approach.
And the difference in the names also really reflect the style. So AI scientist is really there to automate the process, and AI co-scientist is really there to be kind of a sparring partner, brainstorming collaborator for the research scientist. So a lot of papers coming out in the last few months. This is kind of an overview that had this pretty nice diagram where you see that it's not just the literature research and kind of summarizing and vetting of the ideas and then writing the papers, but more and more it's really about using other tools. So you're seeing that actually the sort of experimental work and the modeling work is more and more becoming part of the workflow. Potentially even including real laboratory work with robots and kind of chemical experiments in the lab and all of that. So huge promise there, of course, because if you can make innovation and scientific discovery go faster, there's sky's the limit. So let's dive into a few of these papers from last month. The first one is really kind of if you want to get your feet into this area. It's a very nice survey paper from a very large team of 130 others from the Shanghai AI Lab, mostly. It's a survey of scientific large language models from data foundations to agent frontiers. And they really give a very exhaustive catalog and very good discussion of this area, analyzing what they call LLMs across many different things, many different scientific areas. So not just chemistry and life sciences, but also physics, earth sciences, astronomy, and materials. And they also present kind of a very nice catalog of data sets, because if you want to have kind of a convergence, so here you see these different models for chemistry and earth sciences and life sciences. There have been kind of these, a couple of years ago, these bird specialization for all these different things, and it's kind of converging towards more foundational models, which can deal with many different areas of science. And of course, to achieve that, based on like LLM pre-training, this is really kind of in the post-training phase. You need these data sets that are kind of PhD level tasks in all these different things. And so what's interesting about this paper is they really make the point that connecting the dots, so like multi-hop inference across many different modalities, for example, genes and proteins and images from experiments in the lab, that's kind of where the most potential is. Because for any kind of experiments, you will have, the data will be visual, but from many different experiments, many different devices and modalities. And if you can kind of connect that in an interesting way, it's also something that people are not very good at, and that's maybe where the AI will shine.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of this Gato system from Google a few years ago. That was kind of this generalist that unifies modalities into one embedding space. So it feels like the future would be trying to unify different types of experiments and modalities in the lab to a model that understands all of them.
I think they're fairly realistic. They're not hyping up the potential a lot. They're actually saying, well, it's really kind of an assistant to human, and human AI collaboration is essential. So the weak points of AI models are kind of distinguishing causality from correlation, putting it kind of in the big picture of the theory, and really drawing valid conclusions. And another cautious note they strike is that, well, science is kind of seen as kind of static, but it's actually updating very fast. So if the models are trained on data from, let's say, science of 5 years ago, it's not gonna move the needle. So I like this survey paper. So let's move to a bit more the deep research side of things.
Yeah, so we are starting off with this report, very detailed technical report from Alibaba, so the team behind Qwen. And as a self-respecting AI lab, they have a deep research mode for their agents. So I think what's interesting here is they're describing this deep research system that is actually trained just for this task. So it's a fine-tune, multi-phase fine-tune of the Qwen 30B mixture of experts model.
Qwen 3 30B, right? Yeah.
So
it's an open source model. You have access to the full model and weights, and then you're going to specialize it to be better at deep research.
Yeah. So a lot of this, the focus of this work is the data generation and the infrastructure, the training regime, and all of these that are needed to make a general purpose agentic model into an expert in creating these deep research reports. So their system kind of comprises of these pretty common components. So just web search, reading pages, PDFs, and so on, and taking notes, and then synthesizing them into reports with citations. But I think, what's mostly interesting here...
so the architecture is pretty standard in that sense.
So kind of the agentic loop is pretty standard, but the way they get the model to perform so well is interesting. They also have this iterative deep research paradigm where the system, so this is after it's trained, of course, how it will work is it will create a report, and then it will have access to a bunch of tools in case it feels that it is missing something. This is not something new, but I guess the interesting part is how do they get it to do that, essentially. So they have this 2 phases of training. One is to make it a better agentic model. So this is this continual mid-training where they have a bunch of data and they generate trajectories, kind of like a hidden Markov process where the agent kind of has to pick what is the best thing I can do right now to solve the problem.
And this is, just to clarify, this is really kind of a monolithic agent model, right? So it's a single LLM instructed with a single prompt to basically navigate its space through all of these actions.
Yeah, I think they're quite inspired from the OpenAI deep research, where they're very big proponents of just train a model to kind of know how to use tools super well, and then it will carry out the task without having you to split up it in sub-agents and orchestrate this system. Which, as they say in this paper, is kind of it requires creating this huge infrastructure of how you roll out these tool uses, how do you create an environment where the agent can experiment and get verifiable rewards that are not prone to noise. There are a bunch of gems in the paper. It's a great report on what it takes to actually build this one system versus just hacking together an agentic LLM to call.
So my take from this paper was that there's a lot of ground to gain in this sort of post-training, or they actually split it up into mid-training and post-training. Maybe you can explain what that is. But basically, they generate a whole bunch of synthetic data to really create these realistic trajectories towards deep research reports.
Yeah, so first in this mid-training, they kind of want to teach the agentic model on how to pick the best tools. So when is the time to plan out an approach? When is it the time to call tools to find things from the web? When do we need to reason about results? When do we need to basically switch tasks or modes of operation? But then, as you said, this kind of post-training, which is both based on synthetic fine-tuning data, but also on reinforcement learning trajectories. They basically build this kind of system where the agent can experiment and get a reward. And yeah, the synthetic data is a big part. So they start with large corpora. So they scrape the web, they scrape Wikipedia and all of these big collections of knowledge, and they create a data set out of it. So they create a graph and try to identify what are questions based from the knowledge that are getting progressively more and more difficult to answer. And they kind of generate the synthetic data, and the data actually co-evolves as the system gets better.
Right.
So it's pretty interesting.
So it's kind of a curriculum learning type of approach. And they have the benchmarks to prove it, right? And the medals.
Yeah, and these are a bunch of benchmarks that we are kind of familiar by now on both on deep research and agentic AI use. So humanity's last exam is here, and
but this is a fully open model.
This is a fully
passing the 30% mark.
Yeah, it's an open model, and it's beating even OpenAI's deep research, at least the snapshot that they took at the time. And on a bunch of other tasks like browse comp, which is kind of the de facto benchmark for deep research, it's also doing pretty well. Still a bit behind from OpenAI's deep research system. They also have a bit of focus on Chinese and other AGI, let's say, benchmarks like GEA. But it seems to be a pretty strong model, and the fact that they open sourced both the weights and the recipe behind it is impressive.
No, it's a very strong piece of work, not only because of the benchmark, but also because it's open and the model is actually pretty small, or 30 billion parameters. All right, so let's dive into the next paper.
Yeah, so Cosmos, an AI scientist for autonomous discovery, has definitely gotten some traction online, and I think quite deservedly, although it's, at the end of the day, it is a system that is not supposed to replace humans. It's just there to help them. But they're taking a pretty different approach here.
So is this kind of a deep research system, or is this more the co-scientist here?
Yeah, I think it goes more towards the co-scientist, although one could argue that you need to have a deep research module or component that helps you do the scientific work. So yeah, it's a multi-agent system, and the selling point here is, again, it can run for hours, generate hypotheses, and produce reports that can be used in further iterations, or ultimately it's a report that you can submit to maybe a workshop, or just generally produce new knowledge. And it's kind of the numbers that we see here from these graphs. It can run up to 12 hours, generate thousands of lines of code, and read a bunch of papers to kind of produce new knowledge or deduce some results from a data set. And yeah, what's interesting here, I think, is also they found that at least 80% of the statements that it produces are accurate, which it's also, it's a big number, but 20% of hallucinations in a scientific report is
still a lot.
It's nothing to glance over.
Work in progress, I would say.
Yeah, but on the flip side, this is something that just runs for hours, and a real expert would take 6 months, like they claim with some of these experiments. A real human team would take 6 months to produce it.
My feeling is that they were really like selling the work.
Yeah.
And if you say 80% is or 79% is correct, is that like obvious, or is it like novel, or right? I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room there. But you quite like the technical part of the paper, right?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because a lot of people are trying to solve this agentic orchestration problem, which is by no means easy or obvious. Uh, and here they kind of coin it as a world model. So what is this really? Well, the world model is supposedly this canvas, this whiteboard.
I don't think Jan LeCun would agree with calling this a world model.
Yeah, yeah. So it's basically a whiteboard where all agents
Yeah.
log down what they've tried, what ideas they have, what is the promising directions, and kind of the intent that they plan to take on in the next iteration.
Yeah.
So they kind of build out this graph where the kind of system reads the whiteboard and then decides, do I need to read more papers, do some experiments?
So it's kind of a search graph over a huge whiteboard with lots of intermediate results, right?
Yeah, so they're all connected together, maybe with a previous iteration or maybe some original finding, and then the system has an iteration loop where at some point it stops and says, okay, based on the knowledge that I have now of the experiments, this is where I'll go next, and parallelize a bunch of things to try out.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you hope that you get a report that is at least 80% factual.
Well, or a bit more maybe. But so the main problem with these sort of very long orchestration loops, right, of hundreds of steps, is that essentially the agent at a certain moment kind of forgets what it has already done and starts to go off the rails and be very creative or repeat work or like. So what's your intuition for how they prevent that here? Just by having this large scratch pad, or?
Yeah, so I think the trick here is that it's not an unstructured, a big dump of unstructured data. They kind of try to claim that the world model is actually modeling and preserving the state of the system. So it has a good high-level overview of what it has tried, what is the intent behind each experiment, and what the main objective is in each subgraph.
So is there some kind of notion of, let's say, memory compression, or like summarizing the state, or?
Yeah, I mean, also graph neural networks are big in the sense that you try to encode information both in the graph as in the nodes, but also in the connections between them. So any way that you can get the most information out of fewer tokens is, I think, it's crucial to getting it to work.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually have to read all the tokens of all the intermediate results. And then kind of on the results side.
Yeah, so let's briefly go over them because they're quite technical. This is actually a real experiments with real data. So they kind of, in the paper, they divided into 4 categories of assistance or discovery. One is that just by giving it some real data of an experiment that happened recently, so after it's cut off, and just letting it crunch through the data and come up with hypotheses, it is actually able to end up with the same scientific results or observations. So I think this is interesting that you just give it some data, and then the model will go off on its own, make a hypothesis, and it will try to find out alternatives or try out things why this might not be the case. So it's doing a lot of this consistency checking, and then ultimately it produces its conclusion, and then the turn is back to the human to verify is this actually right or not. And in this case, since it's an actual kind of discovery that was made recently, they can correlate it with what the humans found, and they found that they end up with the same results, which is pretty interesting. But then next, they also have some more grandiose or kind of wishful applications where you get maybe the easiest one is just give it a lot of older studies and then see if it can apply new methods that had not been so popular back then, and try to come up with new evidence or supporting evidence just to have a better understanding of the problem and strengthen the existing claims. So it's probably humans glossed over them, came up with some conclusions, but obviously a system that can scale out and parallelize, it can come up with much more evidence to support and understand the problem better.
So what is the specific case here?
So in this case, they kind of they have some public data and not so much guidance on what to do, and the system executes a pipeline with statistical tools and validates findings against the literature. So yes, a bunch of rigorous work that goes into the lab, like fine mapping, something called co-localization, and source concordance. Don't quote me on what these are. But again, the idea is that these are going then back to the humans to kind of validate and see what new knowledge they can gain out of the experiments that the agent did.
So bottom line is they've been able to replicate quite a lot of human scientific conclusions while doing the work autonomously, but they were not really novel, but they correlate with the human finding, right?
Yeah, and then kind of they take it to the more extreme, which is to actually develop new analytical methods. So it's again given the data, and then it's left up to the system to kind of come up with what is the best approach to crunch them numbers and come up with conclusions. So here is not just answering the when, but also why and if something will happen based on the data that it has. So here it's just trying to show that the system is actually creative enough to come up with analytical methods similar to a human. And I think this is kind of maybe the biggest claim that, again, the results that it gave actually were given back to humans to analyze on if this is something that is valid. And I think it had 1 or 2 examples where this was true.
So here, basically, the system is kind of developing its own tools to move forward.
Yeah, it's just coming up with tools and verifying. Obviously, it's not going to get them one shot, but then it's doing all sorts of things to make sure that they are valid scientifically.
Right. So yeah, definitely worth a read. Cosmos. I think I have one more graph here, but
yeah, and I think this is a bit extreme, but they say that they can discover things, but also it's not extreme in the sense that it just finds out things that humans miss, because obviously as an expert you have some biases and you're going to explore some research avenues, but then the system can try out 10,000 things in parallel and find something that humans missed.
Yeah, but then there's still correlation and causation. I think a bit harder. Okay, so let's move on to the next paper, which is a bit more in the benchmarking side of things. So AstaBench, also from Alan in AI, just like Olmo.
Yeah. So this kind of is a huge benchmark of benchmarks. So it's just a collective and rigorous suite of evaluation data sets that are meant to kind of supervise and measure performance across the entire scientific process. So they kind of break it down to 4 things. One is literature understanding, which is kind of the most obvious first step to understand a problem or to solve a task. Then it's about coding experiments and executing on the ideas, analyzing results and data, and then kind of an end-to-end flow where you have to actually come up with some scientific discovery. And here I think we kind of see a bit more of a pragmatic view. They're claiming that we get a 60% performance in the Pareto frontier on literature understanding, and that a lot of the both open and proprietary API models do pretty well. But then on the flip side, code execution and data analysis are where the even ensembles of systems and multi-agent systems struggle the most. And again, if we go to actual end-to-end discovery with meaningful results, they measure that for some steps of the process, you can get up to 70% of accuracy, which is kind of aligning with the other 80% figure. But what does this mean really? If you only have accuracy of 70% on one step, if you roll it out to a few steps, then that drops to near 1% chance of the whole experiment succeeding.
Right.
So I think this is a much more realistic view of things.
So would it be fair to say that this benchmark shows that deep research is already like a mainstream usable tool, but a lot of these other
follow-up
more data analysis and hypothesis testing kind of workflows are still a bit work in progress.
Yeah.
Right. A similar paper that we also found from last month is Paper Arena, that kind of focuses a little bit more on this literature type of literature research type of benchmarking. And you found this very recent one.
Yeah, I think this was
more
also
on the code agent side, right?
Yeah, this was also announced in the past 24 hours, and it's called Locus. It's in this whole paradigm of AI scientists that actually do engineering work. So the claim here is that this model or this system outperforms human experts, and the experts in question here are PhD, top tier PhD students, and frontier lab engineers at OpenAI and so on.
And what is the task?
So yeah, the task here is actually they benchmark on two tasks. One is machine learning engineering on this MLE bench from OpenAI.
Right.
So this is kind of where the baseline comes from. And the other task is writing kernels for GPU programming.
Right.
So these are things where it was actually verified from real experts, and they found solutions that were more competitive with than human experts.
Right.
And I think here is again the interesting part is not just that it achieves it, but the scaling with time, that it still holds up pretty well
on inference time
on long horizon.
Yeah. So this is more in the category of not AI for industry or chemical discovery, but AI moving faster. So back to chemistry for a little bit. I think it's almost the last paper on our list for this month. It's a little bit older paper from July. I actually found it in the literature overview. That was our first paper. And SciTool Agent, also from Chinese lab, Zhejiang University, is an interesting paper in that it kind of extends these tools that the co-scientist or AI scientist has in their agentic system to hundreds of commonly used open source computational tools across biology, chemistry, material science, and physics, I think. And so basically it's just wrapping a lot of popular tools that scientists already use in the lab and making them available to an agent in a way which is quite smart, because they built a kind of knowledge graph, some kind of let's say data structure which encodes a lot of the preconditions on when you should use that tool. So it's not MCP, it's actually a lot more structured in the sense that it describes what are the different prerequisites. Is this tool compatible with this other one? Does it have the same format? So there's a lot less trial and error and a lot less kind of standard workflows that are being discovered. And they show a lot of nice case studies in predicting properties of chemical compounds, reactivity, synthesis, material screening, and things like that. And they evaluate it, but on their own benchmark. So they introduce a new benchmark, SciTool Eval, where they compare with existing other systems like ChemCrow and other earlier work and beat it by 10%. So I thought it was a pretty nice papers for those really interested in going beyond literature research and planning into the lab. And that brings us to the lab, because tools are not just computational, they can also be physical.
Yeah, so robotics is definitely a very hot space, and all kinds of robots, but the most relevant ones here is robots that are actually carrying out scientific experiments in the lab and kind of replacing even humans in some tedious and physical work that needs to be done. So this PhD student that kind of has an ambition.
Here. I think PhD students in lab work a little bit more than 8 hours a day.
Oh, but this really is one of the complaints with my friends in biology. It's like you have to be available basically 24/7. Such a system could really help.
All right. So also lab tools are coming to your AI co-scientist very soon. That ends our episode for this month. Tomorrow is very much in line with our topic of today. It's a great conference in chemistry in AI called Chem AI, entering the fifth paradigm for chemistry. Stellar program. Check it out. We'll be there with a booth and talks. And it's sold out, but if you really ask nicely, we might be able to arrange something. And then we want to close with a kind of a weekend read, not on scientific discovery at all, but like the paper. Wait, I'm not full screen here. Where's my control? Okay, let's just do it like this. It's called How Do AI Agents Do Human Work? And if we're talking about this sort of co-creation or automation of complex scientific discovery, this paper actually has some very nice kind of real behavioral insights in how humans completing the same task differ from AI agents. And it notes that while, of course, the AI agents are 95% cheaper to run than overworked PhD students in the lab, they might not be so reliable because of many reasons. And if you want to know, read the paper. But for example, they asked an agent to make a spreadsheet with all the receipts in a folder, and it just made up completely non-existing amounts because it couldn't actually access the folder. Kind of small technical problem, but it just created a spreadsheet with outcomes from receipts because that's what it was asked to do. And probably reinforcement learning taught it to never give up, always try. So that ends our episode. Work in progress. So enjoy discovery. Check out Zeta Alpha and join us for Chem AI tomorrow.